Good morning. Welcome to your day 4. So far, we have been working on the backend, setting up sessions. Yesterday, we set up JSON with tokens. And now, we need to figure out a way to connect the front end to our backend. So we're going to build something in React. Actually, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to type code on my editor, but then you as a group are going to drive it because this is React, right? So we're going to need to lean on your React knowledge in order to pull this off, okay? And then we'll see if we run into any issues on the way, problems connecting from the front end to the back end, and see if we can find ways around that. By far, the easiest way of have a separate front end and back end is by using JSON with tokens. So we're going to take that approach, as dealing with cookies on different domains is hard, and I frankly don't know a good way of doing that. So, singing my big number today, Brian. All right. So there's different ways. The first question that I had when thinking about this is, where do I put my client? Should it be inside the folder on the server? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. So let's do it differently. Let's go and create, and of course, don't start following yet. Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, go and create a folder, and just generate a React application in that folder. So I'm gonna go into your folder. Okay, and then let me see, what do I have in there? API mini. So we're gonna do first make this bigger so it's easier to see what I'm typing. So I'm gonna say create React app. I have an alias called crap, so I'm gonna crop out an application here, and it's gonna be called auth client. There you go. So go and do that, because that takes a bit. Just generate a client application anywhere. It doesn't have to be inside the folder with the backend. On purpose, I'm just doing that separately, because you can imagine that there may be front-end developers working on the React application, and there may be back-end developers working on the API, and they don't have to be working on the same folder. They're going to have probably separate repositories on GitHub and everything, so they can evolve their piece of the application separately from each other and work on that without stepping on everybody's feet, right? Yeah. So I generated a folder called auth client in my case. So call it whatever, right? Doesn't have to be that. So I'm gonna open that auth client, go in there, and then just say code, open in there. All right. So now we have a couple of instances of Visual Studio Code. One, well, now I don't have any because I just closed it by mistake. But one is on the client, and the other one is going to be on the server. Two different windows. Having that bar be the same color is kind of confusing. So this is the client application. This is our React application. And then separate from that, we had our server. So our server is pretty much set up for the basics of logging in, right? We're already returning a token. So all we have to do is kind of run it. Let me see, well, do we call this? We call that start. So server is running now. And it's up on 3300. Okay. I'm gonna ignore that, just leave it somewhere in there, and then go back to our client. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna run it. You hate it when it does that? It's like, where's my terminal? Why is that not working? Come on, code. There he goes. So we're going to do the same thing here. Yarn start. I'll open a new terminal because we're going to need that later in a minute. So by now, I'm guessing all of you already downloaded and ran your Create React app. So you have something to show. This is going to be running on localhost 3000, of course, the React application. Eventually. Starting the development server. Okay, finally. All right. Not that. What is this? Why does that look like that? Strange. Let's see. Oh, they changed it. Now it says learn React. Okay. I was like, why does that look different? So is the new Create React app looks like that now, I guess. Cool. So let's take it for a spin. Yeah, I hadn't seen it. It's the first time I see that. Okay. So we have a React application, and we want to use our server. So we're gonna have some kind of login, and let's try the login, and then you can build a sign up by yourself. It's the same thing. So we have a login and a users list, so that we can go and see the users. So let's go and hit the users first. Let's say that we create a folder here, call it users. These are our users are gonna be. Okay, let's make like that. And in here, we're gonna have a users component. Can we borrow this? Okay, so this will be called users instead. We don't need that logo anymore. We don't need that. And let's kill it. All right. And this is not needed because we're not going to style it. We're just going to concentrate on functionality. We're going to leave the design aspect to the experts on this room, which are you. So users, cool. Now we have this, and this would be our user list, users, or maybe list of users. Say that. Of course, we're not doing anything with this component yet. So let's go back and open our index.js and render. Let's get rid of those service workers and all that stuff just because it's noise that we're not going to use in here. Index app. All right. So let's set up some routing, right? So we need a package for routing. So we're going to do npm, yarn add react router DOM. And I want you to stop me whenever this is kind of something I don't remember anymore. So if you feel that way, stop me and ask questions. So who opened the questions thread today? Vera? Is that it? Okay, so let's go in there. Which folder? Any folder. Create app. Any folder. Just any folder. I have to have it in a separate folder. And I am using crap is just Create React app. It takes long. Yeah, I know. All right, so I'm catching up on the questions. All right, back here. So we have our React Router DOM installed. So let's bring it in here because we're gonna wire up a routing from the get-go. So it's gonna be a name import of browser router from React Router DOM. Okay. Some people like to give this an alias, so I'm gonna keep on the tradition of that. And then we have this app, and we'll wrap that inside of our router now. So it's gonna be in here instead. And just like that, we have a router. And it breaks because it says that, what? It's compiling. Come on, it should work. Browser router, as router, React Router DOM. I don't know. Oh, for some reason, it's Babel loader. Oh, I don't know what that is. Let's go break this. Did I change app to users? No, I'm good. It's fine. App.js, it's here, and it's still app, and it's still a sporting app. And then I have index, and I have app here. Should be fine. Let's see. So it probably got confused or something. Let's see, did this install correctly? Yeah, it did. Let's try it again. Oh, come on, really? Did it break just because of that? Okay. When all else fails, I still don't understand what's going on. React Router DOM. Oh, development servers. I feel like stopping soon and restarting to see if my computer responds again, because it's kind of slow. Look at that. It's frozen. See, there you go. So now it was just slow. It's like on the break, I'll probably, I can't do that because I'm running the meeting. I could keep, maybe Caitlin can keep the meeting alive while I come back. Yeah, sometimes it just gets slower with Zoom, and it happens with Zoom only in my case. It just slows everything down. So all of those, there was no error. It was just, this was still compiling for some reason, so it's weird. All right, so let's go. Let's see if this gets better. Check the activity monitor, see if I can find something getting on my CPU. Google Chrome. Zoom, look at that. 140% of the CPU is being eaten by Zoom. That's just not right, Zoom. 131%. How about the memory? Password. Yeah, it's definitely that. It's definitely Zoom killing my CPU. Let me stop the share. Let's see if that goes down, and then reshare again.
I can pause the video too if you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna close. Oh, it went down after I stopped the share. Weird. All right, let's try it again. So 27%, 49%, 88. 99. I have done nothing different from yesterday. I work on Windows, so I haven't even touched my Mac. I don't do stuff on the Mac. 120% on, well, let's see. We'll see how this goes. There's nothing else I can think of right now. Let's try it out. All right, so we have the router, and the idea is when we go to our app, instead of having all this content, which is nice content that we get, instead we'll have a navigation. So let's say that we have this class name of app, have a header, and I have some navigation in here. And inside that nav, we want to bring in some stuff. You remember anything that we could use from React Router DOM that will help us with navigation, like create some links and stuff? Link, yeah. Nav link, yeah. Why I like the nav link better because you could style it. We're not gonna style it, but you could say, there's an active class for this. So let's bring that in. And I say, bring me nav link and route, sorry, from React Router DOM. Okay, and now in our nav, we're gonna add some nav links. Nav link, and we'll have, let's say, something that points to /login, sign in, so it looks a lot like your project, right? And this would be actually, no, we're thinking of users first, right? So users, so that's the users list. Users. And then, of course, we want to have something that points to the homepage. You always want to have the homepage. So we'll do /. We're going to make this exact. You remember why, right? I just wish that the Macs had a delete key like every other operating system in the world. Home. Yeah, they remember the exact. So now we have a couple of links. Let's add something in here. Let's say like, you remember that? It's like NBSP twice. And then have this in the middle like that. Save that. And this should give us eventually at least a space for that. And then down here, we're going to have some main content. And this we're going to have our routes. The path to / would be the component. What would be the component to /? Well, let's say that we have a home component. And then here we're going to have our users component. This is going to be when pointing to /users. So we need a home component. Let's create one, like up here, function, home. And then this is going to be, let's make it just make it look more like what you see on the examples. Home, it's going to be like this. Not that we need to make this a arrow function at all. And then return a div that has an h1 that says home component. It's really nothing there. It's just to have some routing in place. So I have the home component and the users component. Let's see if we could get this to work. What do we have on the users component? List of users. There you go. Come on. All right, so users, app.js. Now we need the users, right? Because we don't have those. So it's hard to work this way. Okay. Look at that. That's not right. And BSP. Did you guys saw that when I typed it? It's NB. Here we go. There you go. Wow, that really is not looking good in that background. So we have home and we have users, right? Hey, home component. Didn't I do exact on the link? How do we fix that? Yep, I did it on the link, but forgot to do it on here. So exact. There you go. And now it should be okay. Home and the users. Now, Let's go grab the list of users from the back end. Remember that endpoint? What was the endpoint? /API/users, was it? Or just /users? And this is where this now, I want to have this be /API. I'll tell you why in a few. /API/users. This is going to be /API/login. Now we're going to make our server, anything that is going to be handled, any routes that the server is going to answer to should be, I'm going to have those in /API. Later, this is going to become obvious why we're doing this. And we don't really need that anymore. So let's save that. And our server now is going to have /API/user endpoint that we can hit. So let's hit that from our list of users component. Who can help me out here? What can I do next? Where should I go for this? We're going to build this, and then I'm going to give you the app.js when we get to a particular point so that you could just replace it on your side. And the same thing with the users list, because there's not really a lot of value on you typing this because you already know how to do it. Yeah, we want to make an Axios call to /API/user. So if we're going to use Axios, let's go and add it. Yarn add Axios to our client project. So I'm adding Axios. So go ahead and go and add Axios to yours so that you have it by the time you copy the code. And inside of the users here, we're going to take advantage of one of the lifecycle hooks, right, to make that call. So we're going to bring in Axios here at the top. So let's see if this wants to work. Come on. Seriously, some days Zoom is worse than others. So here, component did mount. And let's say that this is my endpoint. It's going to be $3,300 /API/users. And then I'm going to say, Axios, go and get me that endpoint. And then you're going to give me a response. I'm going to take that response and say console.log response.data. Let's see what data I get back from there. And of course, this is trickier because handling errors with Axios is not very straightforward. Console.log error. Let's make it console.error. Like so. Okay, so this is what we want to see happen. As we go into that component, let's see home component, and let's go and check out our terminal. See what we got. Aha, error, request fail. Status code 401. Makes sense, right? Should be failing with a 401 because we have no token. So we need to send the token with our call. Only that, how do we get one? Well, we need to log in. So let's do that. Let's say, well, I need a way to hit the endpoint, passing my credentials, and then do something with that token so that I have it. And then we're going to come back here and say, okay, now that I have a token, I'm going to attach it to this request. So let's go and build us a login component. So let's come in here, create a folder, call it, I don't know, auth. Say this auth section. We're going to have maybe a register or something. I don't know. And here's going to be login.js. Again, I'm going to give you the code. Remember that. Just ask questions. Let me see. Do I have any questions? It's taking so long. NBSP. BSP. yeah, it was a typo. Just an HTML entity, I think that's what they're called, that represents a space. So you need to have that token sent. Yep, we need to send that token, but first we need to log in and get that token back, right? So let's go and wire up this component and see if we can borrow some code from here. Okay, so this is now called login. And here we really want to have a form. That's what we want in here, right? So it's going to be a form. Actually, let's add a few things. So we're going to have a form. Inside of that form, I want to have a div. And then inside that div, we want to have a label plus an input. And then we want to have 2 of those. There you go. So this is going to be for the username, and then this one's going to be for the password. And there's no action here, right? We're going to just wire up some event that we handle ourselves. And this is going to say username. This one's going to say password. Save that. The type of the password is going to be password. It's looking good. Oh, we need a button, right? Div down here. And here we're going to have a button. It's going to be type submit. And it's going to say login or sign in. Hey, I want to rename that now. It's going to be called signing. There you go. All right. What's this sorcery? What do you mean? I don't know any HTML. I'm a backend developer, so I just save time. Yeah, it's called Emmet. It's built into Visual Studio Code. If you haven't used it before, get used to it. It's really nice. Like, you can build a lot of stuff. So the way that it works is, I always get this asked on the videos when I do it. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So Brian is on Tom. Yeah. So the way that I created that form, let's do it again. Let's do it again just because it's fun. You know, using Emmet is fun. The most important thing is, let's say that you want to have a component, right? Let's say a div, and you want that div to have a class. How do you express a class in CSS? Well, you do it with a dot. So you could say dot, sign in. And what you're saying is, I want a div with the class of sign in, but maybe you want to have an ID too. So how do you do an ID on CSS? An ID selector like this. And this could be my sign in form, right? So now I'm saying I want the div with this. And in the case of the div, you don't even need to have the div. You could just say dot. And this is going to give me something with a class of sign in and the ID of sign in. But I could have another class like sign in blue, right? Now we have 2 classes. So that's the basics of like creating components. And this could be a form, for instance, like that. It's going to have a couple of classes, and this is going to be the ID. But you can also add properties. And then at the end of that, you hit tab. And it will expand that and give you something with a class of sign in and blue and the ID of sign in. But you could go even further than that, right? Let's keep that there. You could say, well, I want a form, and inside of that form, as a direct child of that form, I want to have a div. So you could do it that way. This means this is going to be inside that form. So doing that, going to the end there and hitting tab will expand it, giving you a div. Okay? But what if I want to have a couple of divs? Maybe I want to have 3 divs. Well, you can multiply that by 3, and just by doing that, now you get 3 divs instead. Okay? So those are the basics. The other one that you saw me do is, well, but what if inside of that div, I would like to have my label. Okay, so now we could say, yeah, but the thing is that I want to have the div with a label inside, but I want 3 of the divs, not 3 of the label. So this would be 3 labels, right? So what we do is that we group it. We say, I want a div that has a label inside, and then I want 3 of those. So doing that and hitting tab, now we get a div with a label inside. Now the other piece that I added in there that you may have noticed is, well, but I want to have a label and an input though. So if you want to have something that says not inside, but as a sibling side by side, then you use the plus sign. So I'm saying, and this is looking a lot like what I did, it says, I want a form, and inside of that form, I want to have 3 of this thing. And this thing is a div that has inside of it a label and an input. And that's it. And then you go to the end of that, and you say, I want 3 of those. You hit that, and then you get your form with divs, with labels and inputs. Oh, man. So that's what I did. The little snippet that you saw me write is exactly this right there. So play around with Emmet. It lets you scaffold, HTML code really fast. So very convenient. Okay, so there are some settings related to that though. I have, I want to see the JSON of this. So I hit Command comma or Control comma on Windows. And this is going to take you into your editor, and then you could hit that little thing there and say, hey, I want to see that as a JSON instead. So there are a couple of things that I have to have Emmet work correctly here. I have this thing that says, trigger expansion on tab. And then what languages I want this to work with. And I say for JavaScript, use JavaScript React. For Vue HTML, use HTML. This is for Vue stuff. I also have editor. Where is it? There's another one, someone in here related to the editor. Modifiers, I don't remember what it is. But make sure that you have at least those two. Of course, you don't want the Vue HTML. You just want the JavaScript thing. So let me drop those two in there. So Vue on the file, preferences. Come on, where are the preferences? Here we are. Settings, not preferences. In the settings, you go in here and say open settings.json, those little 3 dots there. And then when you land in there, copy the stuff that I'm going to drop in here. And that helps. I thought I had another one that was needed to make this work. Apparently, I'm wrong. Yeah, probably that's it. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. All right, so that's Emmet. So let's go back here. Now we have our form. Again, you don't have to follow along. I'm going to give you the code. All right. So if you want, go and create a users file on the sign-in file. You could use the same directory structure, or you could just create a components folder and put everything in there. It doesn't really matter for this example. It's really simple. But just make sure that if you place it in different folders, you're going to have to fix the imports. Okay. So let's go and do this. And of course, from the sign-in, what I want to have is when I click this button, either hit enter on the form somewhere or just click this button, and then I want to submit the login, right? So let's add an on submit on here. On submit, I'm gonna say on submit this dot handle submit for the form. So we need that. So we have our class We can get rid of that component div mount. We don't need that. I'm gonna call this handle submit now. I'm gonna make this an arrow function like so. Yeah, for these bindings. And the first thing, of course, that you always do is this would get the event. And then here you say event.prevent default. Well, let's use in view, that takes care of that. So event.prevent default. And then our endpoint, instead of, oh, look at that, /API/login. How convenient is that? Login. And this is going to be now a post. And we need to pass some data. All right, so this component needs to have some kind of state so that we can gather. We're going to say state up here. We got the username and password. Nothing yet, but then we're going to have something eventually. So, and then the password. Now that we have some state, and I don't worry about it because when I save, Prettier is just going to reorganize that stuff. Pretty nice. So prevent default, and then we're going to pass an endpoint, and the credentials happen to be inside of this state now, right? The state should have the username and password that we need. So we get rid of this for now, right? So and if something here is not making sense, stop me. This way I'm going like slow and talking about it. So if you see something weird, just stop me with a question. Okay. So once we do that, we should get something back. Let's see what that looks like as we console log it. Okay. /API/login, passing the username and password that we have there. Now we need to get there. So let's go out another route. Actually, let's copy this down and say it's going to be for login just to get in there. And let's call this sign in. Sign in. Okay. And then in here, we'll say, well, we're going to need that sign in component that we created over there. So let's bring it in. Call it auth/sign in. Stuff about auth is going to be in there. That semicolon is going to be put there by our friend Prettier. So sign in. And then this is going to be sign in. Hopefully nothing's breaking. We'll see. All right. Apparently nothing's breaking. So we'll need another one of this right in there. And let's go back home. Home component, clear this up. Hey, why is this still there? Evaluation and preserve log. I'm not preserving the log. Did you not refresh? Is that what happened? Okay, users, sign in. There you go. Beautiful form, username and password. It's not the most beautiful form in the world that you've seen. Let's take it for a spin though. Vera, password. Yeah. Let's turn this off for a minute. So Chrome extensions. You're gonna see my extensions. Turn it off. Don't bother me. There you go. Doesn't match definition runtime connect. What? What is this? What did we just do? Oh, let me see. Maybe we're not doing this thing the right way. So Axio. Oh, wait a minute. Where's my login? There you go. So Axios post to this endpoint. It should be localhost there. Passing the state. Okay, let's try this out. Is that state? I don't know what that error is. Don't remember ever seeing it. You guys have better eyes than me. Do you see any, you React experts, anything looking strange there? I have I don't see it. I still have class name. What? Login? Oh, yeah, I do. But that's okay. It doesn't really matter because the name that I give it here is not as important unless I'm using that somewhere else. I can import it with any name that I want. It doesn't have to be called login. Let's change it just in case, but I don't think that's it. Okay, so let's read it. Axios, we have a state. We have an on submit. It's calling the handle submit. Do I have a typo there? Nope. Handle submits. It's going to receive the event. We do want to call prevent default, right? On the sign in. And then we're just going to do a post to localhost 3300/API/login. Let's make sure that we are there. And 3300, that's correct, /API/. Hey, by the way, if I'm here and I do Command K2, look at that. And if I do Command K1, hey, it closes to the first level so I could see all the functions. /API/login, so that's good. /API/login. Passing the state. Yeah, let's try it out. I don't know, maybe it's my slowness. So Vera. Oh. Yeah. Password. Oh, the username and password is not reading it from. Oh, are we not? Hey, you have to help me out, right? This that stays still empty, so I'm passing an empty string for sure because we haven't wired those, and I totally forgot. So let's do this. Vera password, just to get that out of the way first, and then we change it. Okay. Yeah, this is not refreshing. Look at this. It's still not refreshing. All right. Cool. Now we could just do submit, and that would be Vera and password, and you should be getting the token. Hey, here it is. We have a token. So yeah. Cool. So we know that we can get the token. We know that we can hit the server. And the reason it works is because we already wired up cores, right? We have this cores thing. So we can go across without any problems, okay? Now, let's go and make this dynamic. Let's grab the value and update the state whenever we make changes here. A good way of doing this is using what are called, you remember what they're called? When the state controls the component on the form. We have two types. One of them is controlled by the state. The other one is not. Controlled components, right? So if you go to the React documentation, they talk about control components. So let's make this a control component. And what that means is the value of this component, this input thing right there, is going to come from state. So let's go here and say the value for this component is going to come from this dot state dot something. And then it's also going to have an onChange. And then this onChange is going to be this dot handle change, input change. Right? That's it. So our component here is going to be username. And then this one is going to be password. And of course, we're handling everything on a single input. So we're going to give it a name. It's going to help us. I'll say this is going to be name, the name of this. The one on top is going to be username. And the one on the bottom is going to be the password. And don't worry, Prettier is going to make it all better as soon as I save. Look at that. Nice. So now my first input is called username, same as this property on state. The second one is called password, same as this property on state. And they're wired up with a value pointing to the right thing. And we have this handle input change that we haven't written yet. Let's go write it. So handle input change is going to take, it's similar, right? It's going to get an event, same thing, same way. And then from here, do we really need to call prevent default on this? I don't think so, right? All we need to do is we need to grab the name from that component so that we get access to this. So we're going to say const give me from, I remember this is event, but we really care about things on the target. So we can even destructure this, but we're not going to do it just to make it a little simpler to read. I'm going to say from the event.target, there are a couple of properties that I care about. Don't help me, Visual Studio. So here we care about the name. Also, we care about the value of the input. So we take the event.target and we grab the name and the value. So for when this fires here, the name is going to be username. And the value is whatever is on the input. But when it fires on this input, the name of the component is going to be password. Okay? And then we could use that to update this, to update the state. So we could say this.set state. And then we pass an object, and the property that we want to update on the state, it's always going to be the value, right? But the property that we're going to say update on the state is whatever the name of the input is. So when it fires on the second input, this is going to update the password property on the state with whatever the value is. But when it fires on the first input, it's going to update the username because that's the name, that string right there. So the username with the value. Cool. So that's it. That should work to at least keep updating the state now as we make changes to it. Let's see. This is the state, that's username. What did I? Oh, yeah. And nobody says anything. You see me do this and you don't say anything. You have to say something. What else am I missing in there? I have some weird syntax in there. There you go. So how about Jonathan? Yeah, Jonathan and password. Yeah, cool. So we're getting a token. Now, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to give you the code for, we haven't changed the index, only the router, right? But still, I'm going to drop this code in there. So this is index.js for you. And then app.js, because now we're going to start talking about the authentication portion of it. Here we go. And the easiest way of doing this really is to just build it with you from scratch or give you this code. But I wanted to walk through because you pick up little things like the emmet, you know, the idea of making this dynamic. So we like to kind of go back and review those little concepts that you already saw, because it's been a long time since you touched on them, right? This is why we don't have like a already made boiler thing and we build it here in class together. Remember to add Axios to the project. And do you think, I'm going to do a poll while you copy that. So there's going to be a question. I'm going to make it anonymous. So I would appreciate it if you answer that honestly. And the question is, should I just give you as part of the auth mini, have this client already made, or do you see any value on, using half an hour of our time building it here in class? A lot of no's, a lot of yes. Well, one yes, one yes. Class would, class would go faster if we already have it. Okay. Cool. All right. So you should have all of the code that we have written so far. Please install actions, give it a try, and make sure that you're not getting any errors. And if you do, let me see. Am I missing something else? I don't think. I think you have all the packages that I have, all the code that we wrote. If you have an error, it might be because you place the components in different folders. So just make sure that you update the imports, right? It's users and sign-in imports. The conversation about turtles now on Slack. So can we use Passport.js to store the token? Passport.js is a library that will let you wire up different, they call it strategies, kind of authentication, like username and password. You can use social logins. They don't store anything. Storing is something that you have to define, whether you want to use sessions or you want to use tokens. They have strategies for both. They have a way for you to configure to use cookies or to use JSON with tokens. What they will do, though, is whatever you're using, the data that comes back from the client, whether inside of a cookie or inside the payload of a token, they're going to place that as the rec.user for you by default. I don't know if there's a way to change that, but I know that by default, that's the behavior of Passport.js. So it's not really going to store anything for you. You pick what technology do you want to use for both storing session information, like keeping the state, and the other one is the medium for sending that back and forward between the client and the server. Cookies or JSON with tokens is a medium for you to share that, to send information back and forward. And then storing the session itself, you could either store that inside of a token, like keeping the state inside of the token, or keeping the state on a session, either in memory or the way that we saw databases, memcache, and key value stores. So there are kind of different things. I see people like if you're deploying from the same URL anyways, you might as well just use cookies. So remember that the token is just a string, right? And then the cookie is a key value store, so you could store strings in there. So what I've seen people do is they produce a token on the server, but then instead of dealing with sending it back and forward and asking the client to attach the token and save it, if they're running from the same domain, they just stick the token inside of a cookie and use cookies for that. Because that way, the client is going to do it automatically, and cookies are a header thing, and you make it more secure by say HTTP only, so nobody can get access to them from JavaScript. So it's perfectly fine to have a JOT token that you store inside of a cookie if you're running from the same domain. Don't know if Brian, if that's kind of what he was hoping for. And from those that don't know what Passport.js is, just a library that will help with authentication. Like JSON with token is for producing tokens. Passport has a gamut of ways for you to wire up authentication. It takes at least, from what I've seen, about 4 steps to wire up something with Passport. Passport is middleware, and remember that. And it behaves like, you could think of it as a kind of a router more than middleware itself, because it could use pieces of middleware. So you have to configure Passport, you have to bring in some strategies. It's a little more complex. I think I have a video that is like 5 hours long or something, doing a couple of videos that combine are more like 5 or 6 hours, just wiring up Passport on an application. So we moved away from that because it would take way too long just to try and teach it. Yeah, session storage on the browser, the problem is that it goes away. So if you want something a little more persistent, you want to use something like local storage instead. Or a cookie, because the cookies, they're going to stay there. And as long as they're not expired, the browser is just going to hold on to them unless you clean them by hand, right? Or you have some kind of setting that will clean the cookies every time you close a page. So if you're on the same domain, cookies are really, really convenient. Even if you're still using tokens, you could just stick the token inside the cookie. Yeah, I don't, the question is, so that looks like cookie are safer. Are they better? I don't know. I can tell you they're really convenient when you're in the same domain, because you don't have to deal with CORS issues, and you don't have to deal with grabbing the token and saving it yourself. So it for sure saves on JavaScript code on the client. So if you can use cookies, even if you prefer having tokens, I would say I don't see anything wrong with just produce the token and stick it in a cookie. I'll tell you what, I like sessions. If I can get away with sessions, I like the ability of expiring sessions immedially, right? I like that. So if you're on a server and you want to, there's a user in the company and you want to revoke access to that user, just go and say, yeah, no longer. And that will work, right? But then it doesn't scale as well, because now the server, you need to keep the sessions, or you need an extra server for that. So I don't know. They have their uses. Okay, so not getting the token, are you getting an error? What are you getting back? Are you signing in with the correct credentials? Remember, you have to use credentials that you have on your database. Don't use the credentials that I have in there. Get rid of that. Okay. This is because I have on my database. You might be getting a 401 because you need a user that you need the credentials for your users. Yeah, so if you're getting an error with the Create React application, it's not related to the code itself. So just do another npm install or yarn to see if that will fix it. And if not, just nuke the node modules folder and the yarn log file, and they just yarn again to make sure that you get all the dependencies and wait. I kind of ran into that error, but I thought it was because my computer is slow. So it may be something related to Create React app that's probably not getting all the dependencies the first time around. It is likely not a bug on Create React app. Yeah, but it needs to download the packages. It is talking about higher up in the tree as if you had that folder inside of a folder that had a Create React app. So I would say make sure that you have that folder outside and it's not contained within a folder that has other versions of React app applications. Do what I did, just step out and create a brand new folder and have it in there instead. See if that helps. And if not, we could just do a screen share, see if we can troubleshoot it. Let's see who's having issues. All right. Just answer yes into that and see if we can troubleshoot everything. Troubleshoot all the things. The API, yeah, we haven't made any changes to the API other than I changed the addresses to be on /API instead of just being on /. Hopefully we get to see why later. Depends on how fast we could get this sorted out. But that's the only change that we have seen. But this is still, I have it running, so nothing's stopping you to go and testing your endpoints using Postman for sure. Are we going to save the token in local storage? Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do. After the break, probably. Yeah, the server is running on 3300. This is the port, and then the React application runs on 3000. So they should be running on separate ports. If you do try to run the React app and it detects something running on port 3000, it's just going to run it on a different port. They're smart like that. They just say, hey, this is 3000 is busy. I'm going to use another one. So now we have two servers running on our computer. And if we were doing MySQL or Postgres or one of those database servers, we would have another server running on our computer in a different port. That would be the database server. Hopefully, you'll end up doing that later. And luckily, we don't have to deal with that. Okay, I see Lauren. Let's do a quick. I'm gonna have it so that you can share your screen, because that way we could help. We could get some help. Okay, so could get help from the team here, helping us out troubleshoot that. Lauren? I pronounced that last name wrong. I said Dubois, but it's not because it's missing that I in there that make it Dubois. So it's like Dubose. Oh man, I'm in trouble now. Okay, so we have some sharing. Let's see. It's complaining about an error on your see that comma on line 3 at the end? You don't need that there. That's invalid on JSON. You see that X?
Oh.
Yep. That helps. There you
Yep,
go.
that helps. Thank you so much. I was driving me nuts.
It, yeah. And it's a little things, right? It's like a little comma there.
Yeah, I could not figure it out. I was like, what am I doing wrong? But it worked in the React app. I was like, what? So thank you.
Hey. All right. So that was Lauren. Anybody else? Let's see. Alejandro? Okay, he's good. Michael, Vera. Yes, Vera. You said Luis. You want to say something, Vera? No? Okay. She said no on camera. All right, so let's go back and share and say. I say we take a break because what's missing from this is very little. We're gonna save the token when we're done. Doing our sign in. We're gonna save the token to local storage, right? Instead of console logging it. And then after that, we're gonna figure out. Okay, so when we go visit our users, we need to attach that token. So we're gonna grab the token for local storage and then attach it as part of the request. And that's done. And that's the rest. That's your project right there. And then we're gonna have some extra time, and I want to show you something else that is not related to authentication directly, but it's related to security, to have your API be a little more secure. So what do you say? Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll see you in 5. All right. Good. Okay, a couple of things. So the first one is, can you show us log out? We'll mention on the way that you handle that. We're not gonna do it. When using tokens, you delete the token from the client, but then if you want to control that on the server, there are a couple of options that you could do. But mainly it's gonna be either whitelist or blacklisting the tokens. We'll talk about it. We're not gonna implement it. We'll take some extra time for that. Good source for learning Redis. No idea. Must confess, never used it. This is like the realm of the operations people. They handle those servers. We don't even worry about that. So I haven't even tried to learn it. Wouldn't know. I would start there for sure, right? Like the documentation. And they normally have links to resources, external resources. Sorry. So Husband, we're saying, how's your install going? Cool. Huh. Interesting. There was a Create React App inside Create React App thing there going on. It's like Create React App Inception. All right, so let's go and save that token, right? We have it, and it's called token inside of our data, okay? So let's go grab it and save it. So we're console log rest.data, and then we know that the token is in there, okay? So inside of rest.data. And we have this thing called local storage that we can use. So inside of, not here, but in the sign in here, I'm gonna say, hey, local storage. I'd like to save something. And we're gonna use a couple of methods here, 3 of them. The first one is called set item, and this takes name. I will say monkey, monkey. So this is, no, actually, let's call it jet token just so we could see it there. Or maybe jot. So this is my token. This is the name of it. And then the data that I want to save in there is res.data.token. So I'm going to grab that token for res.data and place it as the jot property on my local storage. by doing that, if we go and save that and run it again, let's go back to the browser, hit sign in. We got that token, but if we go into the application tab and we look at the local storage for this website, now we have this JOT thing there. And if you notice, oh man, come on, make this bigger, 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 bigger. If you notice, the name of the token that we have there, I mean, this token right here is the same as what we had before. We ran this twice. Where is this auth token showing up in there? Okay. And that's the value of it, JOT. And here's the value right there. So now that we have it, we could read it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our users. And instead of set item now, we'll say, hey, turns out that I have this endpoint, but also I have these options that I could pass in to Axios as an additional argument. So I'm going to say the options const options. And one of the options is, I would like to set, what is it that we need to do? How do we pass the token from the client to the server? You remember? Parcel tongue. What is that? You remember that? How do we do that? Headers, right? We added to a header. So it turns out that there's an option here that says headers, and it's an object. And when I could pass any headers that I need. You remember the name of that header? Authorization, yeah. And then what we want to pass in there is the token that we have, right? We're going to read that token, and we're going to pass it as a header. So now we have a way to pass the headers to Axios. But wait a minute, I don't have the token. I need to go and get the token. So let's go grab the token. Let's say const token. It's going to be equal to local storage. And I want to get an item now. And the name of the item is JOT. Save that. Okay. So we grab the token, and then we configure the stuff that we need for our call to Axios, and then we pass that options object as an argument after the URL. And you remember, if we go and look for that JOT and it's not there, this is going to be undefined, so this is not going to be set up. So this works the way that we expected. It's going to give us a "you're not logged in" message. Okay, it should work fine. We're not showing any users yet, but at least we know that we can log in without getting that error. So let's go try it out. Okay, we refresh. It's gonna clear this, so there's nothing in there. And if we go to users, we should get an error. Photo 1, unauthorized, right? Because we're not logged in. But if we go and sign in, now we have our token. And if we go back to the users, we should, we get a photo 3. You remember that photo 3? So let's go and sign in with Jonathan. I think Jonathan has, that's it. No, everybody has the same problem. Jonathan, like that. Here we go. Yeah, so remember that we're checking for that value on the roles, and it's not there. So let's go and fix our server, because otherwise we're going to be bounced all the time. So auth mini, remember that check role thing that we have there? We check it for other. I think one of the roles that we have is admin. So let's do admin, save that. So you might run into the same error because we have this check role implemented now. So that's the problem. Now, if we clear this and we go back to users and refresh, we should not get any errors. That means that we're good, right? We're getting the users back. There you are. Okay? So this is now working. Now, if we go back to the application and remove that jot, just deleting the jot and trying to refresh on the users, we should get our 401 error back. Okay? 401. So we're good. Now, sign in again. Cool. Go back to users. Very nice. Now let's go. Let's show some users here, like under here or something. So let's take that list of users that we get back from the data and place it in there. And you could probably do that together, right? Like just do an UL here with an li in there. And then this thing is going to be coming from React. And then this li. And the idea here is that we're going to have some kind of on this .state .users. Okay. And then if we have, well, we're going to have it because we have it defined. And we're going to map over that. And from there, we're going to get, let's say, a user. See if I could finish this. Visual Studio Code won't gel on me. So close that here. Okay. So map. And then I have this li. I think since this is going to be so simple, we don't even need those keys anymore. So we could just do this. Li, this is going to have a key, and the key is going to be the user.id. And then in here, we're just going to say user.username, I guess. This is what we have. Something like that. All right. So let's make some state in here. It's going to have a users list. And it's going to start out as an empty array. And then once we get the data, we're going to call set state here, saying this dot set state. And what we're setting is the users. And it's going to be res.data. And I believe the data is the users directly. So that should work fine. Let's go try it out. See what broke. There's that users, not a function. State that users. No, that's not true. It is a function. This that state that users. Is that state that users that map? Yeah, this is my computer doing what it does. This is fine. This is fine. This is good code. Come on, React. Finish compiling. Oh man, look at that. How long it takes. All right, so now we've finished. Let's go and refresh. This is what we should get. Oh, come on, really? I don't see it. Who sees it? Okay, let me see. The rest that. Oh, maybe the data is not coming in the right format. Let's see. Oh, it's got a users there. Yeah, it's got a users key in there. So we need that users key. I thought we did not. Let's see. res.data.users. There you go. I thought the data was like coming back as a response. It's not. I keep forgetting. I keep doing that. Yeah, here we go. Tom, Sai, Jonathan, and Vera. I know the users that we have in there. I thought we had like the array was coming back. All right, cool. Lesson to be learned, always look at your data. So we have home, we have the users because we're signing in, and we have this sign in that we don't need it anymore, but it's there. Let's add a sign out. Let's add a button for signing out. What would be signing out? Just had something here instead of, it would be like a regular button, I guess. Let's make it an anchor tag. There's no, it's not going anywhere. Let's make it a button. Feels kind of weird. So a button that's going to say sign out. This sign out outside of the render. Sign out. Local storage dot remove item jot. And you could check. You could say, hey, if I do have the item, remove it, right? We're gonna just do that for now. I'm gonna remove the item jot. So if we do that and we come back, I have this beautiful sign out button. So if we refresh, we have the users, we sign out, and then we refresh, and we should get a photo one, but we did not. What is that? Is it not done compiling? Local storage that remove item, sign out. Oh, they're removing the wrong item. Okay, here we go. Now we should be removing, let's take a look at the applications tab. Make sure that we're removing that. There you go. It's not there anymore. So if we refresh, list of users. So that's it for the sign out on the client side. All we do is remove the right with the right key. So when we go here, when we look for that token, it's not going to be there. So this is going to be undefined. And of course, you're going to get that 401 beautiful error when you come back. So that's the sign out. Now, the question that normally arises is, yeah, but if someone copied that token's still valid. Yes, it is. So how do I handle that problem? Where you have two options. Either you do a whitelist or you do a blacklist of tokens. So what that means is, well, it looks like if you whitelist, that means keep a list of valid tokens on the server somewhere, maybe the database. And then on the blacklist side is the other way around, right? Blacklist, it's a series on TV. Keep a list of blacklisted tokens in the DB or on the DB. I like whitelist better, but I guess this depends. Like if you produce a lot of tokens, like millions of them, but you don't blacklist often, then you want to have a blacklist instead. If you don't produce a lot of, you don't have a lot of users, so you would rather have a whitelist, right? Because that's the point. But then that means that you also have to clean that up. So whenever the token expires, you need to clean it up like every once in a while. It's a lot of work. Now you have to keep maintaining that. So my point is, I don't know if I want to do that, if I want to keep this thing, because that means that on every request, you have to check your list to see if that token or the token for that user, whatever you use for that, you could just remember that there is a key called GTI that you could have on the token. So you could save the token ID in there. And if you're keeping that on the database, you have to check on every request, check the list, either the white list or the black list, to see what to do with the token. It's valid. It's still, you could use it, but now you have to go and check for that. So I don't know, sounds to me like a lot of work. So the other alternative to using blacklist or whitelist, which is, this is the first one, like keeping a list of the valid tokens or invalid tokens. The other one is using a refresh token. And the idea here, you have an access token that is short-lived plus a refresh token, and this is the one that is long-lived. Just two different types. So this access token maybe lasts 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, depending on your company, 8 hours, 4 hours. And then the refresh token can last longer. So what happens is, by default, the client should always try to access the resources passing you the access token. And then you check for that. And if the token is not valid anymore, then you send an error back to the client. You say, hey, that token is not valid anymore. So the client says, oh, okay, it's not valid. Oh, by the way, I also have this other token here. So whenever they log in, you give them 2 tokens instead of 1. You say, this is your access token, and here's your refresh token. So they hold on to both. And then the client is responsible for using them. I send you the access token. Oh, invalid. Let me send you the refresh token. And then the server says, oh, now this one is valid though, but the type of this token is the refresh. So that means that I got to go back to the database, check your rights again, and give you back a brand new access token again. So those are the 2 strategies. The beautiful thing about this is, as you move on to production, where you're not going to be implementing auth by yourself, you probably use a library to use things like social authentication or maybe another company, and they normally have the mechanics to handle this for you. So it makes you feel like you're writing a TCP transaction. Yeah, you kind of are. By TCP, he means Transfer Control Protocol, which is part of the TCP IP spec that we use. And he kind of does this back and forward to make sure that the messages arrived at the destination. And it used to be something like this back and forward conversation. Do you get the message? Oh, you didn't get the message. I'm going to send it again. Did you get the message? So, yeah. So what is it that you make a decision, right? Do you use sessions? I told you that I like the ability to cancel a session easy on the server because you don't have to worry about this anymore. Because every time a session comes in, by default, you always check against the session. So you only get the session ID and you say, is the session still valid? So you can invalidate a particular session by the ID. But in the case of tokens, you're kind of doing that manually, right? So yeah, you have to do this. And now, as soon as you move into this realm right here, you're just re-implementing sessions using tokens. Oh, I missed that question. What did I put on the Express server to send? No, we did that yesterday. We didn't do anything special today. The server was already sending the token. So the only change that we did was change the URLs. And then you remember that we did the check roll thingy? That's what we changed. We changed so that it checks for the admin role instead. I think last time I had it as other just to show that it will work. And the reason we're doing admin is because when we're checking for the roles that we added, by default, we added, where's my payload? We added admin and root. So one of those 2 will work. And of course, this check role is checking that the list of roles on the response includes that role. So this is from yesterday, review from yesterday. So change this to admin so it doesn't break. And then that's it, and the routes. That's all we changed there. Cool. Sorry, I missed it because I was talking about the other thing. I recommend that you live with tokens and you give it enough time. If you're going to work with tokens, don't go into the realm of trying to re-implement sessions with it by using blacklist and whitelist. This is unneeded complexity for sure. But if you do have to do it, I like the approach of the refresh token plus the access token. There's plenty of sample implementations online that you could pick one. So instead of, this is a personal preference though. This is not a recommendation. This is just say, I kind of like this approach better. The idea of having an access token that has all the rights, like the roles, and that's only going to last, let's say, I don't know, an hour. And then passing a second token that is the refresh token. And I say the expiration date on this is going to be longer. And the only information that I have in here is whatever I need to go and get the roles again. Maybe the user ID, that's all I need here. A type of refresh and the user ID. And then I create a brand new token that has the access. And then in this one, I add the roles. Let's say if we're doing something like we did yesterday, I would add the roles to this access token here. And that's it, right? Like the user ID, the roles, but all the information that I need so that I don't have to hit the database. If you have a valid access token, I don't need to hit the database. I trust it because I know that nobody touched it. And if the information that's there, I put it there. And I say I mean me, the API, the server. Last company I worked in the Dominican Republic, our tokens lasted 8 hours or 12 hours. I think it was like 12 hours. So you logged in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, until 8 o'clock at night, that token was already valid. But this is a system that we use for employees within the firewall. So we were okay doing this, having a token that lasted 12 hours, I think it was. I don't remember if it was 8 or 12. The security people decided. So the users had to log in next day. In the morning, they were logged out, so they had to log in again. But the token was good for the whole day for them. All right. So that's it. As you can see, it's just local storage remove item, set item, or get the item, and then just attach it to the request. I'll just give you the code. I want to show you something else, unless you have more questions about this. This is pretty cool because now you could go across domain. As you can see, we're on 3000, hitting the 3300, no problem. Now, since there are no questions, I'm going to move back to the server for a minute. So if you can go with me with this and go into the server. Open up a terminal, another terminal down here. And I'm going to install a package. I'm going to say yarn add.env, like that. What is this package? What is this source here, Luis, that you're talking about? Where? npmjs.com. I'm going to do a search for .env. This package right here. So what does it do? Well, it's got 2.6 million downloads a week. So a lot of people use this, so you could kind of trust it. So once we add it, we can add this little incantation at the beginning of our file, like really early on the file. I'm just going to place it in the index.js. So let's add it. I'm going to add it here, and then I go back to my index.js on the server. And somewhere at the beginning of here, I'm going to make this even my first line, like all the way up there. Okay, once it's done. this little incantation that says, hey, I'm going to require this package that you just installed, and I'm going to call config on it. What does that do? Well, it turns out that now we can add to our folder. By default, you do it at the root. You can configure that, but you will see that just about everyone does it here. So at the root of your application, you can have this file called .env, hence the name .env. .env. And this is a kind of a standard that we have come up with so that we can add key value pair values into this file as text. So you remember how we have in our index this secret, this jot secret thingy? Let's copy this out of there. Don't do it yet. Just follow along with me and ask questions if it feels weird. So I'm going to get rid of that from that index.js file. I'm going to place it here, right? And I'm going to give it a name. This is a plain text file that is going to separate. Think of it as a key value store that is separated by the new line. Every time you do enter and go to a new line, that's a brand new key on that object. And we're going to call this jot secret. Again, this is not a requirement, but you will see that when doing things like this, like constant on the environment, it is kind of an unspoken standard to do it in uppercase like this. Okay, and then equals to that. So now I have this jot secret in here inside of this file, and the value of that would be nobody touches the door. This could be with or without the quotes, double quotes, it works the same. If it makes you feel better, you could do it this way. So it's a little clear that this is a string, but it doesn't really matter. It's always going to be a string. So now this jot secret is not in my application code anymore. It's now part of that .env file. The cool thing is that now I could come into our git ignore and say, hey, by the way, I want you to ignore anything inside of .env. So ignore that. So let's call it environment variables. There are different patterns of doing this. This is the simplest one. So you start here and then you go from there. Oh, it's already there. I had it. All right. But the environment variables file, right? I'm saying I want to ignore that. So that means that this is never going to get pushed to GitHub. So no one's going to see your environment variables. So this is never going to get pushed to GitHub. So what do we do now? Is going to say, hey, how can I get access to that? Well, turns out, I don't know if you have seen things like on the port. You probably have seen this somewhere on examples. Const, and then something like port equals to process.env dot port, or 3300, right? And then instead of having that there, hard-coded, you say port. What happens is that when your node application is running on your computer, on the server, it's running inside of a process. And this process lives within an environment. So it turns out that some of the variables of that environment, like the host and the address and the name of the directory, a few things are in there, but you can add to that object some, we call it environment variables. I find it funny because they're actually environment constants, right? So you have this constant called a port. It's not there by default. So unless you set it manually through your operating system, it's different from Windows and Unix operating systems. But unless you set it, it's not going to be there. So this is going to be undefined. So on development, you're going to be using this. But once you deploy, let's say, to Windows Azure, Amazon Web Services, Heroku, all of those companies, they all publish this port constant that you can use. So as you move this to Heroku, it's going to use whatever port Heroku assigned to this constant. and then it's going to be defined instead of using that 3300. Why is this interesting? Well, because now with that .env file, we can have development time variables, including our secrets. So now we could go in here and say this jot secret is going to come from process.env dot jot secret. And what this little library does is it reads the .env file and takes all of the keys that it's got there and places them inside of this .env object for me automatically. So when we save that, this jot secret now comes from that .env file. What you have seen people do is they're going to do something like, well, if you don't have it, if you don't have that variable available, then I want to use something by default. And then that way you're safe to push this to GitHub and say, you know, add a secret to your .env file with this key. So whenever somebody goes and downloads that code, this is what they'll see. They know that they need a .env file and it needs to have that key, and you're going to place your own secret in there. Why is this? This is not related to authentication per se, but now this is a way for you. Let's say that you sign up for services to send mails. They're going to give you an API key and some credentials. Let's say that you sign up for a Postgres database on one of the online services. They're going to give you a username. They're going to give you a password. They're going to give you a database name. So all of those things are secret. You don't want that on your GitHub repository. You want to keep that somewhere safe. So every hosting company like Heroku or Microsoft Azure, or any hosting company that is going to run your application, it's going to give you a secure way for you to have those constants defined with them. So they will only exist in the place where they need to be. Like in production, you're going to have some keys for production, some different secret. But then during development, let's say that you have a local instance of Postgres, or we're using SQLite. So now which is really cool, because if I wanted to have, you see how we have this database thing, we have this configuration file, and we're reading this object. Nothing is stopping us for going into that Connects file here, and instead of hard coding this information, like that SQLite 3 and all that, having this key come from a configuration file. We can go from process.env, I don't know, client, process.env, username, database name, password. So all of those, all the information that I need for my connection to a regular server, one of those that require authentication, all of that could come from a .env file. So on my development machine, I can use my local instance of MySQL or Postgres. But then when I go to production, I put the actual credentials that I got from my production server. We normally cover this on the deployment week. So this is you're gonna see that on the videos for the deployment week, or with the project week. So what I'm trying out this time around with you is, let's see if we could start getting used to having that .env file. So when we get to the project week, this is one less thing that we need to worry about, because we've already been practicing that. Do you see any other uses for this, where you could use this? So in the index.js for our server, is there a way to register and get the token immediately? I don't understand. What do you mean? Ah, okay. I think I got it. You mean when we do register to get the token right away, like here, it will look similar to what you have on the login. So what are we doing on the login? We're just calling that generate token and returning that back. So it's similar to this, right? I insert that, have the credentials, and then what we're doing here is we're returning the new user ID, but nothing's stopping us from coming here and say, I think we call it generate token for the user. We don't have a user here, so we would pass maybe the credentials, that username. Is that what we're doing? Let me see. Because this is going to depend on how we implemented this. So we're getting the user in this case. So we could pass an object where the username is going to be the credentials, that username. But what you really do is you query the database to get the user. And this is only in the cases where the database is going to produce some extra information added to the user that's different from what you have here. For instance, let's say that you have some default values and you say, okay, everybody that I create on the database, I'm going to add the role of, I don't know, user. Since you don't know exactly what those roles are going to be at all times, so here you say, okay, go and save that user, do your thing on the database, add any default values that you want to get, and then I'm going to bring that user back. And then if you only need, that would be username. So if you only need the username, you could do it this way, and it's fine. But if you need more information like the roles and things like that, then you go query the user from the database. Once you have the user, then you pass that user, because our generate token is expecting to have a user to grab all the data from the user. Okay? And that's it. Once you have that, this is going to give you the token, right? So you say const token, it's going to be equal to that. And then once we have the token, just pass it back down. Token as a second thing, the same thing that we did on our login. And that will fix it. Okay, that env. Questions about this. So whatever you have on this file here, it's going to be added to that process.env. This is going to be the key, and this is going to be the value there. So now we can hide that by having it in our git ignore. And you can see Visual Studio is giving me a visual indication that this thing is kind of grayed out. I don't know if it comes across in soon. Everything else has like a brighter color, but then that env is not being sent there. Can you post the project later? I missed the code. Oh yeah, sure. I can definitely. I'm gonna zip it up and just post it on Slack for sure. So did this work? I don't know. Let's go try it out. Let's see if this works. So let's go into the server here and say, well, you're saying that you have this secret and it's coming from the environment. Let's see if it's true. So what are we using this? We're using this to generate the token right here. So before we use it, let's console log this. It's a console log token from process.env. Let's see. Let's see if that's true. It would be jot secret. I'm gonna save that. Let's go and do a quick login. All right. Let's go back to our terminal and we should have a token from process.env. Look at it. Nobody tosses a dwarf. So just by adding a couple of things, we add the library, we add this and that .env file. Now we have a place where we can have our secrets and they're safe here. And as you go into the deployment, you'll see how we could go to whatever the service we have, they'll have a way for you to add those for production information. Questions? All right. So for tomorrow, you're going to be asked to do something similar to what we did today. So this project is going to be a really good reference for you to when working on the sprint challenge. The idea is we spend a couple of days working on sessions. So for the sprint challenge, we're going to have you work on JOTs instead. So good luck. See you on Slack. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Vera.